All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to Hear About It podcast. We have a very special episode today. I am talking with Charlotte Grieve. She is a German performer based in New York. She's a multi-instrumentalist. Her first album, well, you have a number of projects, Charlotte, but your first album as Wood River Music was released in February of 2020. I'm just so focused on the release of your second album. Just refresh my memory on your first album there. That's really bad. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. That album is called More Than I Can See by my
Right.
band Wood River, and that was actually the second album of the band, but the very first one we did is like 7 years ago or something, and that was a limited edition LP, so nobody really knows about it, and that's why it's not available anymore. It's just sold out.
Oh, that's a
But
very
yeah,
cool way to do the first album.
I guess, right? Yeah, it worked out at the time, and we've been playing together for a number of years, and the band has kind of been evolving into different things. And then we released More Than I Can See last year, right before the pandemic. It was literally like we went on tour in Europe, and when we played the last show, people were already like talking about COVID, and I was like, I don't know, whatever. And then our drummer had to go to Italy, and then he got stuck there because everything shut down. So we just got the tour in. We had a lot more touring planned, and it all got canceled, of course.
Wow. There's so many threads to pull on here, but we'll start with Wood River's second album. It's called Sediments We Move. It's releasing October 15th, and the first single, Sediments We Move Part 5, has just been released. I just heard it. I was very pleased with it. It does remind me of some other bands, such as maybe the Mars Volta. I hope you're okay with me saying that.
Of
I
course.
hope they're on your list, and so on and so forth. It's just this prog rock, spacey adventure. And if we can expect that from the whole album, I think we've got a pretty good album on our hands.
Yeah.
So Charlotte, there are so many things we can talk about, and I think the first really is, I think we might as well talk about the COVIDness, and just the fact that you, with your band Wood River, or however you're sort of set up, you actually had a lot of tour dates this past year. You probably have, more tour dates than many independent musicians that I know of. So how and you're playing all over the world. You have 5 dates in Brooklyn coming up, I believe, and then you're going on a larger tour. You sort of cycle between sort of the tri-state area and New England, and then Europe. How are you managing this? How are you booking all these shows, and is it more difficult? How's that been going?
You mean especially after COVID?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's different projects. So some of them I'm leading myself, some of them I'm a side woman. That's the easiest thing ever to me. You just like go and play. You just get asked to play, and then you go and play. And I have a few things in like around New York in the next few weeks and months, I guess. And then when I'll go to Germany in the fall to play with my longtime band. It's called Lisbeth Quartet. It's a German jazz quartet, like contemporary
right,
jazz. And
right.
we've been together for 11 years.
Wow,
And we're going to work on our 6th album.
wow.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. We have 5 albums out. The last one came out in 2017, entitled There's Only Meg. And yeah, we're going to get some new tunes together, play some gigs, and then hopefully go to the studio.
Yeah, terrific.
And so that band, I'm kind of like, I'm writing the music, I'm organizing the shows, just like that one and Wood River are kind of my main projects. And sometimes it's easier, sometimes not as easy with like booking shows. And with the quartet, it's pretty clear, like in the jazz world, and Wood River is very much in between several worlds.
Right.
So also when I was booking the release show for the last record, the
Mm.
jazz venues were like, this is kind of too pop for us, or
Yeah.
like to
Right.
that indie side. And
Hmm.
indie venues are like, well, this is just like a jazz band. So it's
Right.
just
Right.
interesting that I feel like the audience is already there for this kind of music. It has been there for
Mhm.
a while. Like people are
Right.
interested in this kind of music, but the way that the structures of clubs and venues and festivals is set up, it's just getting there. You know, that the
Right.
genre is becoming less important, and so I think it's all in a good way. But you know, there's some old
Right.
structures that are like, well, this is not quite what we're doing, you know.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah.
maybe people wouldn't care. People would just be like, let's go to see this music, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, that's why sort of festivals are maybe the name of the game now. And I do agree, like I actually went to a really cool speakeasy type jazz show in Brooklyn, and I have to admit, like, um, just with the ambiance and the sort of idea of what that place was, I think if I heard maybe the tunes from your first album, I'd be kind of like, oh, I thought this was jazz or something something, and then, but I have to say, from what I've heard of your second album, I wouldn't even care. I'd be like, whatever, like this
Yeah,
is fine, like, yeah, like,
it's hitting me
they can play
somehow.
wherever they want, totally. Like,
Yeah,
I really enjoyed your new single, absolutely,
thank
and
you.
of course your first album. I mean, you have so many accolades. I did look up Lisbeth Quartet. They
Yeah,
won what's called a Jazz Echo Award.
yeah.
Can you explain that at all? Because not everyone's heard of a Jazz Echo Award.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, it's much smaller just because it's a smaller country and a smaller scene all over, but like it's kind of an equivalent of a Grammy, but in a smaller way, if that makes sense. Like the Juno Awards in Canada or whatever, you know.
Well, yeah,
It's a bigger music award.
that's terrific. Congratulations. Um, I did not know that. So what's your origin story? Did you start in Germany? Are you from New York or?
I'm from the north of Germany. I grew up in a small town. Then I moved to Berlin to study jazz, to do a bachelor's degree in jazz and jazz education. And then about 9 years ago, yeah, in August, it's going to be 9 years, I moved
Wow.
to New York, to Brooklyn. I did a master's at NYU in jazz performance. So I'm very much a jazz musician that has now been branching out to related musics, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Um, and but I was mostly just the saxophone player, and then the other instruments and the singing came much later, like just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've just stayed in New York, and I still have bands like the Elizabeth Quartet in Germany, and like other bands that I play with over there. And I always made it a point to go over there at least twice a year or something, once or twice a year,
Yeah.
to see family, to play, to keep those bands alive as well. And otherwise, I've been here and started Wood River, I don't know, 7 years ago, something. Yeah. And
Right.
it's all kind of evolving into a thing, and doing some side woman shows with different types of mostly jazz ensembles. And yeah, the choir thing was just very much my own idea. I was like, I really want to write for choir. And
Right. So you're with a choir as well, or
what's that?
you're with a choir as well?
Well, I just contacted them six years ago or something,
Right.
because one of my old friends, she was a part of the choir. She was singing with them, and we kind of talked about me wanting to write for choir, because I had heard a saxophone player doing a thing with the choir in New York. And she was like,
Wow.
well, this choir is actually pretty good, and they do a bunch of crossover stuff. They're a classically trained choir, but all amateurs. it's an amateur choir, which is amazing to me. They just do
That's
it for
great.
fun.
Yeah.
um, and the conductor is a professional, amazing conductor. But she was like, you should hit him up. Maybe they want to do something. And that's how that whole thing came about. I just wanted to do it, and they were like, sure, write a piece for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, what is this experience sort of like where you have you have a lot of albums out and you've won some awards, people know about you. You can, book and promote yourself in many different places, you know,
Mm,
and yet there are still people like me meeting you for the first time, and
yeah,
they might not even know you have 6 jazz records out with, another band. Um,
yeah.
what's that like to sort of constantly reintroduce yourself like that?
That's actually a great question, and that's just kind of been a journey to figure out as I go. Um, and of course, like I'm looking at my colleagues too, like everybody's doing the same job in an extremely different way, right?
Right,
Like
right,
we're all musicians in New
right.
York or in Berlin or wherever, and
Yeah,
maybe we went to jazz school and we did a thing, but then everybody's totally finding their own path. And
yeah.
um I was doing one thing kind of for a long time, which was playing with my quartet, and that was pretty much it.
Mhm.
And then coming to New York and starting to playing with other people and stuff, I realized I actually have like a bunch of other things musically in me that I need an outlet for. Is that the right
Yeah,
word? Outlet?
outlet is good. That's great. Yeah.
Okay. And and one time I was writing a piece for Elizabeth Quartet,
Mhm.
and Wood River hadn't even existed yet,
Right.
and I was writing it, and really what I wanted for one part was something that sounded that I was trying to put on piano, but really it was like a synthesizer or guitar part that was just like chords,
Yeah,
with effects on it.
right,
And so in the band we're like, well, this kind of doesn't work for this band. I was like, yeah, it doesn't. you know
right,
there is something, I'm hearing something else that needs a different outlet. and
right.
um and that's kind of how Wood River and that sound got started. Just to think about that. And then I was just kind of following that route. I was like, whatever, like if there's something I want to do musically, I should just do that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
sometimes I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, people are really confused about all the different projects, and they're like, well, what are you doing? Are you a jazz musician? Are you like now playing synthesizers? Like, what are you doing?
Right, right.
And I understand the confusion, I totally do.
Mhm.
um but at the same time, it's not really a choice. It's like, well, I love these different things and I love these different genres, and I want to pursue them all.
Yeah,
And I'm hoping the longer I do it, that it'll just get it'll just become a thing. It's
yeah,
just like, but yeah, there are some challenges for sure, because
yeah.
some people see you just the way that they met you. Well, I thought you were a jazz saxophone player, like why are you singing, what is this? Or
Right,
I thought you were playing this prog rock music, like now I hear you in a free jazz context, like what?
right.
But it's not really a choice. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Unless I wanted to just cut myself off and be like, well, I'm just doing one thing. But
yeah. Who wants to do that? No, of course not. Yeah,
it's interesting, and everything informs, like one project informs the other, and like I learned something here that I can put into the other thing.
wow. That's terrific. That's great. I think a lot of people want to do what you're doing, explore several different styles and be recognized for them for their different qualities, basically. Um,
Yeah,
so so Sediments We Move, it really is quite different from your first album, or sorry, your second album as Wood River
yeah,
music, right? The second album, it's sort of like more poppy, and there's like sort of a for lack of a better phrase, there's sort of more like la 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 type,
yeah,
melodies. And this one, it's just very like, it's almost not like you're on a mission, like you're going somewhere. So how do you sort of think of that? And I do want to mention, by the way, there's this whole sort of rollout with this album. You've got like a team, and even the artwork, the graphics are really engaging. So how do you sort of, you really did sort of make it look like this bigger, badder thing for the third album. How do you sort of go about that?
Um, well, I was thinking about it, and I was going back to, because I started writing this piece, or this whole process started, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago,
Yeah,
if I'm correct. I have to look it up again, but it was a while ago. It
you're right.
has been growing for a long time. And it was supposed to come out earlier, but then COVID hit, and
Yeah,
it was hard for labels as well, and musicians, everybody was just like, wait, what are we doing,
wow.
um, but basically, I the way I started this project was like, well, I want to write something for choir, and I want to mix it with something that is totally not a church choir, which is like, to me,
Okay.
like an indie band that goes like guitar chords, drum beats, and
Yeah.
synth pads, and just like this kind of epic, like, oh, thing that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
without trying to make it sound medieval or anything, but like,
Right.
I wanted to have the electronics side and electronically manipulated sounds somehow merge with something extremely acoustic and extremely tender,
Yeah.
like voices, like acoustic voices, there's it's so pure to me. That's like the purest thing to me. And in a way, a band
Yeah.
that has like tons of effects and just like these fat chords and everything is like not very pure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah,
just to
totally.
find a way to make them one sound was super interesting to me, and a big challenge also, especially when you play that thing live. It's just like very hard sonically
Right.
to make that happen. Of course, in the studio you can just like mix the things the way that you want and put them in certain places, but
Quite
that
so.
was interesting to me, to just like find that middle ground and somehow make it one sound. um and so that was like the first idea, and that's what I wanted to do. And then I just kind of started writing. My brother wrote the lyrics to the piece, and so when I had the
Right.
lyrics, I started writing. I had this topic in my head, like there was like a theme to it,
Mhm.
and a deeper idea of stuff that I had thought about for a long time. And then yeah, I just kind of started writing, and was not restricting myself in any way in terms of which influences go into the piece. I was just like, I'm gonna write, I'm just like stream of consciousness, like I'm just gonna write what comes out. And the end, what, how do you say the thing that's there in the end? The result.
The results, yeah, it's
The
fine. Yeah.
result is now something that kind of has all the musical influences that I have been walking around with for my whole life in this piece.
Right,
So
right.
there are moments of like, church type chorale moments, but also like a metal guitar riff, or like a
Yeah.
metal drum beat, or a
Yeah.
little like little hits,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I listened to a lot of metal as a kid, and
Wow.
it came
That's
out it
great.
came out in this way. I was like, I guess we're putting it in. And then also, of course, jazz and improvised music is very much in there too. Some free jazz moments, and there's like an instrumental piece. I shouldn't say too much, I guess, because it's not out yet, but there's an
Yeah.
instrumental piece that is just
No.
kind of like just this like rock free jazz thing.
Right,
And
right.
and then something that is kind of little moments that are kind of like poppy, indie pop something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I guess it's just like an image of myself turned around, outside, inside out, and just like, here's all the things, you go deal with it now.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And I do like the way that you sort of blended all these different flavors based on this single you just released, Sediments We Move Part 5. It's available on Bandcamp and Spotify, so on and so forth. That's Wood River Music. So I think you do sort of have a time limit, right? So I'm gonna have to pick and choose. This kind of
No, it's okay. You can
you
keep
got
going. I
time?
have an hour, yeah.
That's terrific. I really do have a few more things I'd love to talk to you about. First, let's talk about sort of choosing your brother to write the lyrics. Because frankly, I do think that's a good idea. You know, I've worked with instrumental bands in the past, you know, and you can sort of be in a danger of not really saying anything
Yeah.
substantial, you know, like with your lyrics, and yet it is a largely instrumental piece from what I've heard. Um, how did you choose your brother, and how did you sort of choose what to say no to, or like come up with a concept that you were okay with for the album?
Um, so the process, it had like different stages, because
Yeah,
when I started writing this piece, I hadn't written any lyrics yet.
right,
Like the whole, although the other Wood River album came out earlier, the whole lyric writing started much later than when I had started writing for the choir. It's just like that came later. So I was like, I don't know how to write lyrics. So
right.
my perception was just kind of like, well, the choir's just gonna sing la 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 la.
Yeah.
And then I went with that idea to a conductor. We were meeting up and I was showing him like my first little draft of like 20 measures. And he's like, yeah, this is all nice and stuff, but we need lyrics,
All
because
right. Yeah.
the way that you can place a note when you have a lyric is much clearer,
Right.
and much easier actually, than just singing la. You know, if you have
Yeah.
a word that you can form with your mouth, it's easier to sustain a note in a certain pitch and to give it
Right.
a shape, which makes a lot of sense. So he was like, well, I hope you're gonna have some words here, because we're not gonna go la 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 for an hour, you know.
Right. Right.
It's not good. And you
It's
know,
not
them
good. I
being
agree 100%. Yes.
totally, and them being amateur singers too, like that would have been like kind of weird. And also, I didn't yet have a theme. I just kind of started writing in the sound idea that I had and was presenting it to me. It's like, this is good, but like, what's the story? I was like, yeah, what is the story?
Yep.
and um and I was thinking like, what could it be about, you know? And at the time I had already kind of spent a lot of time just in my head thinking about family and family ties, and how certain things get carried down, like certain character traits get carried down over generations.
Wow.
Like if you look at yourself and then if you look at your grandmother, and you're like, oh, there is a total line
Yeah.
connecting us, even in the way that we move our hand, for
Yep.
instance,
Yeah.
the way that our finger looks when we point at something, you know. Just I
Yep.
could just like look at pictures, I'm like, that's my grandma, that's also my mother, that's also me, you know. It's just
Yeah.
like you can't really do anything against it. And then I had tea with my grandmother. She was still alive then, and we were very close. And she told me a story about her husband that had died a long time ago. And I was like, wow, that sounds exactly like my dad and my brother and my other little brother, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, I know, they're all the same in this way, you know?
Same. Yeah.
And I was like, this is perfect. And so that was
Yeah.
like kind of
Yeah.
the core idea. And then I stretched it out to not just family, but also the chosen family and the surroundings that you put yourself in. Like if you, like even a city or a town or friends or life partners, whatever, you know, they all become part of this like layer cake of a person. And I was just really in love with that idea. I still am.
Yeah.
Because if you look at someone, it's like, wow, you changed me in this way. I'm using this word that I'm using right now because you always said it or whatever, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I have.
and
Sorry, I
no,
have
no,
noticed that thing of sort of absorbing words. That isn't just family, right? That's like, you know, like
totally.
if a
Yeah.
friend uses a phrase, then event, you know, if you like
Yeah.
it, yeah. And that's kind of a weird thing, especially being an artist in any kind of way is like, wow, I have all these things that I want to say, but I just absorb this other person's sort of like
Yeah.
speech, you know, for a few
Totally.
seconds every day. Yeah.
And that's how communities are growing, like, or when you're a kid and you have your friend group,
Yeah.
you make a vibe, you build it, you know, by language and by ways to, or by music that you listen to, but ways you move, you know. It's like everybody's trying to figure out their character, you know, and if you find people that you like, you will just adapt, you will just
Yeah.
like make it work subconsciously, I think. and
Right.
and that creates a bond, and that creates
Absolutely.
then your character, you know. It's just like so amazing to me, and you see it in every person, you know, in some way. It's like, wow, if you then meet their old friends, it's like, oh my goodness, like there is my friend, and I
Yeah.
didn't know their, you know, social hang, you know, 20 years
Right.
ago, but it's still in them. Anyway, so that's the
No,
idea.
actually, so Charlotte, this is terrific, and I think you'd be a really good person to ask this next question. I wasn't really planning on mentioning this, but we're talking about creating communities and stuff. When I talk, or basically the memes that I see, the internet rhetoric that I do see, and sort of people responding to it is sort of like, everything is about like, this isn't worth my time, that person isn't worth my time, if this person does this, then they're not worth your time, like, and
Yeah.
it does seem pretty counter to the things that we've been talking about. Like, eh, how do you manage that? Is like, in your music circle, is everyone just fine, or do you have to do that as well, of just, even though you want to be part of a community, do you have to sometimes get yourself out of situations, or?
Yeah, I think especially after COVID, you know, I feel like we all realized a lot of things,
Yeah.
probably because we had a lot of time to think about, to reassess basically.
Hmm.
And at least from all my people, like friends and family and everybody that I'm talking to, everybody kind of went through it or keeps going through it now that the world is supposedly opening up again.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know. Yeah, I
let's see
love
how
the
long it,
quotation marks there. Yeah, I, I agree.
I mean, let's see how long it lasts and enjoy it while it lasts. But this thing is not over, um, and I don't know. There was a lot of time to think about, well, which are the people that are really important and that I cannot live without, and how does that look, and how can I cultivate that, and which are the interactions, especially like in a huge music scene, that I don't want to have anymore, you know, because they're not beneficial for my day,
Yeah, right. Quite so.
you know.
Quite so.
And for me, and everybody's different that way, and everybody needs different things and works in a different way, but um, for me it's important to go out and to be out and meet people and stuff, but just to a certain extent, you know. You have to
Yeah,
see like what are the actions that you can take yourself and the people that ground you, so that you can actually think and be creative and feel inspired, but also not like, well, you're supposed to do all these things and like meet up with all these people and connect to everybody you can connect to, you know.
right, right.
And there are different schools for that, and I think all of that is valid. It's just like a very personal thing,
It is.
to make
I
choices, you know. And after COVID, especially, where we were like being restricted of everything,
right.
now it's a lot for me. It's a lot. It's been a lot nicer to pick and choose and to dedicate my time in a different way and in a more
Yeah.
valuable way than before. And I really hope that I can keep it up, because sometimes it's like, well, whatever. We're like, we do it just like before, okay. You know, after we said, oh, everything is gonna change.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
But I think, just speaking for myself, it's important for me to pick and choose and to see where my energy where I can put my energy in order to get inspiration and be part of a community, but also take care of myself and alone time and meditating and writing and, you know, and doing
Yeah.
nothing also sometimes.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Charlotte, I got to dig slightly deeper here, because I think it really is interesting to me, the notion that more and more people are meditating. It's such a personal thing, um, but it's just such an interesting quality in a person. Um, are you willing to share maybe like any one thing that maybe you wound up thinking about while you were meditating, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was always a person that said, well, I can't meditate. Yeah, it's just not. I
Right.
was just very set on that. And then I got invited to a all women's artist meditation session for the full moon last
Wow.
year, right before COVID. And my reaction was, I will feel so nervous going to that, and it'll be probably super weird, and I won't know anyone, and what's gonna happen. So I decided to go because I
Right.
thought it was like good to like broaden my horizon.
Right.
Do you say that in English? Broaden your horizon? I don't know.
Absolutely.
You
I
say it
mean,
in German.
yeah, that's now I'm really wondering how often we actually say broaden our horizons, but the concept is definitely there for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just to open up and to like tap into something that you normally don't tap into, and tap into a community that you don't know anyone, and just like hope it's gonna be fine. And it was extremely like eye-opening and like really enriched my life, because the woman Noga Shefia, she's a bass player from Israel. She was leading the hang, and she was leading the meditation, and it was just really amazing. And then she kept doing that over COVID on Zoom. And I think we all went through moments of anxiety and like losing it, and with the protests and COVID and
Yeah.
everybody, just such a big wave of everything going through the world. And also for us, especially in New York, it's like it
Yeah.
was a lot to deal with. And I just started meditating, very on a regular basis with this group, like every once in a while. And then also just by myself, even 10 minutes here and there,
Great.
15 minutes, 20 minutes. And it always feels really good. And just like with many things, still then I kind of stopped doing them, because
Yeah.
I feel like,
Yeah.
well, I'm feeling fine, so why should I meditate?
Exactly.
And it's
Yep.
just like you're doing lots of sports and it feels so good, and then you're like, well, no, I'm just gonna stop, because I'm just not staying with it for
Yeah.
no reason. It's just like a lack of discipline, but it feels good to know that there's this state of mind I can tap into, because I have been doing it
Yeah.
on and off basis. But it feels like an island where you can just go, and you choose to go there whenever you want, but it exists, whereas before I was like, that thing doesn't exist for me, I'm not doing that, I don't know how to
Oh,
meditate and calm down. But in terms of like when I was really into it last year, I had a couple of moments that were so beautiful, where I thought it was just 10-minute meditations, but I was able to tap into it right away. Like I
yeah.
was like starting, I was like in the
Yeah.
thing, and then I thought, when I'm opening my eyes now, I'm gonna be like this much higher from the floor.
Yeah.
Then I wasn't,
Yeah.
but it was an amazing feeling, and gave me a lot of focus and a lot of calm energy. But I was more awake afterwards, which was amazing.
I think that's what everybody wants with everything, is to just drop into to it that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And sometimes it doesn't work, and that's also fine, But
Yeah,
just to know that state of being exists, it's just kind of a very reassuring and like beautiful thing to know.
definitely. That was great. Let's circle back really quick to picking Julius to write the lyrics, and what did
Yeah.
he choose to write about?
Yes. So I was telling him, look, this is what this piece is supposed to be about.
Mhm.
And as I said, I wasn't writing any lyrics at the time, and he is a writer. So
Right.
he has been writing books, and
Oh, wow.
he has always been writing like lyrics for his whole life, just playing in different bands. He still plays a lot of music, but he chose the a different path, but
Yeah.
extremely creative writer. And what I love about his writing is that he has the ability to say something more hidden than
Yeah.
I am able to. Like, the lyric, like when he first sent me the first draft, I was like, well, we have to talk about this because I don't get it. He was like, well, we're not gonna be so blunt about everything. And I like that, but also I was like, can we find a middle ground so that it's like still a little bit more accessible? So we changed just a couple of little wordings,
Yeah.
just because I didn't know some of the vocabulary. And what I really loved about his approach is, like, I told him the whole family, friends, like character thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he combined it with this image of nature and moving sediment in nature, right? Like how a grain of
Wow.
sand can go. And I hadn't thought about that, and that was entirely his idea and his influence. And I love that so much, because it just makes the human experience so much broader if you just look at the world and how mountains exist, or like how
Yeah.
a
Quite
piece of
so.
stone can look different just because it went through these like penetration of water and wind and sand. And that's exactly that same
Yeah.
image to me, you know.
Yeah. I think that does help because yeah, I've done some hiking and I think, you know, I maybe noticed something was missing that I was just looking at these mountains as images, you know?
Yeah,
I wasn't really thinking about all of that other things that goes
yeah,
into it. And it's a big part of it. That's great. Good call. And so you have 3 albums with Wood River. I believe there's like 4 instrumentalists in the band right now. Um, your first album is an LP only release, you said on vinyl.
yeah.
So how did that really work? Because, you know, you are this Jazz Echo award-winning artist, you know. Um, I'm sure you could have possibly sold a few more albums, to be honest. How did you guys agree on just having like a limited release first album?
It was just, the band had just started. We
Hmm.
were very much in the beginning of the band, and it sounded very different. I wasn't singing. I was
Hmm.
literally singing like a few long notes on one of the tracks. It was more like a lot more jazz with some effects or whatever, you know. But it was a totally different band, and we had just started off, and this label had approached us and was like, well, we're doing this thing. And it was just at the time the right choice because it gave us a reason to tour.
Yeah.
um, and I'm also fine with it having been limited and it not being out in the world like totally accessible, because
Oh no,
it
that's a
was,
cool flavor. Yeah,
yeah, it
for
was a
sure.
moment in time.
Hmm.
And it worked back then. But
Yeah.
I mean, between then and now, so many things have changed. Like, I was first co-leading the band with a guitar player, and then I started to just lead it myself for several reasons. And musically, it became a totally different thing, and it became more songs and less
Jazz.
less these pieces that, you know, I don't know. It was just like,
No, I hear
it was
you.
a journey.
Yeah, it is a journey. I hope you don't mind I asked that. I was just pretty
No,
curious because I
yeah,
have a friend who does that. He is a producer and he'll release like, you know, 2 8 tracks of a, you know, an original band and then call it good, you know, like but I was curious how other people sort of made those decisions, I suppose.
yeah,
So that's terrific. And then so the album's coming out October 15th, right?
yes.
So it is actually, we are recording this August 14th. So you have exactly 2 months. What does that 2 months look like? Are you just touring and are you playing these songs live yet? Um,
Yeah, the thing is, it's very hard to tour with a choir. And also, like, in still COVID times, you know, the choir
mhm.
is like the worst ensemble to have. Just
Yeah.
like everybody's spraying. But
Yeah.
there will be a release show in Berlin with the original choir with Cantus Domus that is on the record. That will be in early December. Until then, I'll be here in
Mhm.
Brooklyn playing some shows with different bands. I have a trio called the Choir Invisible. We're playing on Tuesday. and there are some shows
Yeah,
in Prospect Park actually, because there was the city
saw
corp
that.
grants thing where people are just setting up shows in the park in Prospect Park, which is awesome.
It is.
Um, and just a tiny bit of touring in around here,
Yeah.
East Coast, but not too much of my own stuff because actually Wood River is kind of like scattered over the planet at the moment, just the band because of COVID,
Hmm.
people made new life choices and um, we just need a little bit more like time to figure out how we can get together next time, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
Well,
otherwise I'm just kind of awaiting what's going to happen with this album. It's a very special moment after so many years and lots of hours and months
yeah.
that I can share it, and I'm excited what people think about it and how it's going to hit them. I'm very glad that you wanted to talk about it.
I'm glad I've sort of found you at this time. I'm really excited for the album, and I will definitely remind people when it comes out. Yeah, you did a great job, and yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm sort of keeping my eye on the whole uh, COVID part 2 thing, and but I'm trying to
Yeah,
go to some shows before it really um, escalates, I guess. I
yeah,
don't know what to say about it right now, but you know, honestly, like I I think it would be cool to catch you in Prospect Park. I think I might try that try that out, to be honest.
cool,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, definitely. Congratulations. So I guess we're about to close up, but I this is just a little trivia fun fact for the Brooklynites. I'll just do 2 more questions. So
Sure.
first of all, I do we talked a little bit during the setup, and it turns out you are friends with the lead singer of Rebel Bucket, or
Oh
one of
yeah.
yeah, or and that band, they had some big singles, and they were so much fun live. I think I saw them in Torrington, Connecticut. Um, Uh, what do you what's that like? What's it like to know the lead singer of Rebel Bucket while they were like putting out all these albums that, kind of showed up in like TV shows and stuff like that? Kind of cool.
Yeah. I think I knew Cowbells before I knew Rebel Bucket.
Uh-huh.
So Cal's band that they're
Right.
doing as well. And they were also part of this meditation hang, actually. That's where I got to
Oh.
know them. And it was cool um yeah, there's like some kind of parallels, like they're also playing saxophone and singing and
Right.
you know also improvising but playing kind of like indie-ish like pop rock stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just what I really like about the community here is that and it became very apparent in this very first where I went to this moon meditation right before COVID, and the room was filled with just a scene,
Yeah.
just these amazing women that
Wow.
um, that were extremely sweet and accessible, and everybody was just interested in everybody's story. And I was a little bit intimidated because I was like, well, I really love everybody's music here in the room, but like nobody knows me. But it was so nice to just see that there was also, because it wasn't at a venue, I guess, and it wasn't at a place where there were like a bunch of other people from the industry or whatever. It was just all these female artists coming
Wow.
together and sharing what they've been thinking about, so on a personal level. And the
Wow.
fact that that was possible just kind of like erased anything that was like, oh my God, it's the singer of Deerhoof right here, what I'm gonna do. Everybody
Cool.
was just like, hey, so yeah, oh yeah, we play the same festival, nice, bro. It's just
Yeah, right.
it was just beautiful in that way. And I feel like this is apparent in general also in the jazz scene in Brooklyn, with people that I've been looking up to my whole childhood or whatever, you get to know them. It's like, oh hey,
You're right. Right.
easier, less boundaries in some ways. Obviously not always, you can't generalize, but I had
Right.
some just beautiful encounters with people that have a much bigger name, and they didn't care. They were just like, yeah, play or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the reality of having a name in real life is probably much different than I expected, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
That's a great story. And so just one more there. Your label, you're releasing the Wood River music through a label called New Amsterdam Records. I think that was a good choice in terms of a name. New
Yeah.
Amsterdam, the original name for New York.
Yeah.
How do you find them, and sort of what's your relationship like with them? How much do you talk to them with the release of this album?
Yeah. Actually, so it's a co-release. It's New Amsterdam, but also Figure Eight Records. Figure Eight is the label of multi-instrumentalist, bassist, and everything, Shazad Ismaili.
Yeah, I've heard of Figure Eight. I'm sort of eating egg right now.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, and
Sorry.
no, and it's also a studio, and I recorded there a bunch. We actually did the last Wood River record there, and I recorded the solo vocals for the choir piece for Sediments We Move at Figure Eight.
Mhm.
And New Amsterdam is just a label that I've been following for a long time, and they kind of embody musically what I have been looking for a long time. If you look at their roster, it's just good music.
Right.
But there will be an indie project next to a string quartet, next to
Yeah.
you name it, next to like an ambient thing or whatever. And I saw it, I was like, wow, all these artists are, they mean a lot to me. And I think it's so great that there's a label out there that incorporates so many different things and still finding the similarities and the things that all these different musics share, just in a specific aesthetic, an aesthetic that lies between boxes of genres. And that's exactly what I was talking about in the beginning, that we need more of these pools, and Figure Eight is
I
similar in
agree.
that way. They are just like, it feels like, well, they're releasing something in a certain aesthetic that still can mean very different musics,
I agree. Yeah.
and I was really hoping to work with both of them, and then the fact that it worked out in this way is just like kind of amazing to me.
Yeah.
And it feels like I'm working with a team that understands what I want to do musically,
Wow.
and that is not trying to put me in a certain corner, but like it's just feeling very supportive in that way and very understanding. They're like, oh yeah, no, we totally get it. It's just like
Right.
all these different things. And to them, it's like normal because that's what they've been cultivating. And that feels amazing, because I just feel very understood and heard in that way with my music. And I'm hoping that through these labels, it'll be easier to find an audience that is quote unquote trained or used to this kind of in between sounds. And it's just really great to be part of that community now.
That's terrific, Charlotte. You did awesome. We immediately inflated to an hour. So
That's
and
great. That's fine.
yeah. So okay, I just got one more. I'm actually quite curious. You came to Brooklyn from Germany. You've been in Brooklyn 9 years. Like, what are your spots? Do you drink coffee? Where do you go to get coffee? Like, do you have any of that stuff? Like a pizza place, anything like that?
That's a great question, actually.
Yeah, I had to. I'm quite curious.
So I lived in Crown Heights for 6 years, then I moved to Lefferts for 2 years or so, and now
Okay.
I'm back in Crown Heights in
All
a
right.
different apartment. So in Crown Heights, like, let me see, I don't really drink coffee because it makes me be shaky.
Yep.
But I
That's
still
legit.
like Little Zelda on Franklin Avenue.
Okay.
I really like Sit and Wonder, that coffee shop on Washington.
Cool.
Um, in terms of food, let me think about this. Obviously, Chavelas is great.
Oh
Mexican place
yeah.
on Franklin. It's just so lovely, and just the vibe they create, and obviously the food is just so good. But it's gonna sound like everybody's like, yeah, we knew that, everybody knows these places. But and Chuko ramen is, in my view, the best ramen, and
Yeah.
the crispy Brussels sprouts they make
Yeah.
are so good.
That's awesome. So I gotta say, because that's such a great comment. It's just like, yeah, we knew that, but when you first get to New York, you really don't. Like,
Yeah,
the first
that's
maybe
true.
even 2 or 3 years, you're still making your map, your little internal map of the city. So,
Totally.
you heard it here first, people. Little Zeldas, if you're moving to New York in this
Yes.
crazy time, which is still happening. So yeah,
And maybe 2 or 3 bars that I want to recommend also to everybody
please
who's
do.
listening. Charlene's on Flatbush is a super divey bar, and I love it for that. They have a jukebox. Fancier place, Weather Up on Vanderbilt. If
Whoa.
you want to have a fancy cocktail in a room that smells really nice and has good light. And then Bar Bayou on, everybody says Bayou, which I don't know why, but I think it's Bayou. It looks French to me. They have great jazz shows many times a week. You
Oh,
probably know the place
what's
on
it?
Nostrand, Bar Bayou on Nostrand Avenue.
I gotta try it. I gotta go.
And
Terrific.
they have a great wine selection and some snacks and stuff. But yeah, really great music always. So you should go there too.
I will. I will. Nice. That was great, Charlotte. You pretty much nailed it. All right. We're gonna
Awesome.
say goodbye. Thank you for listening to this pretty souped up edition of Hear About It podcast.